Voces Globales, el podcast que te brinda perspectivas del mundo.
Bienvenidos a Voces Globales. En los episodios de este podcast se debate un tema en específico sobre lo que sucede en el mundo. En cada debate tendré nuevas voces que compartirán su experiencia y conocimientos y debatirán para que conozcamos diferentes perspectivas. Yo soy Martín Díaz Acevedo y si quieren contactarme para sugerir temas o ser invitados, me pueden encontrar en LinkedIn. El día de hoy debatiremos del bilingüismo en Colombia. De Bogotá a Barranquilla, a Santander, Cartagena y Amazonas, taxistas, estudiantes, agricultores, empresarios y ejecutivos corporativos en el país comparten un objetivo en común: la fluidez bilingüe en los idiomas inglés y español. El bilingüismo contribuye a la conexión del crecimiento económico y la prosperidad en cualquier país. Beneficia a todos sin importar el estrato económico o social. También proporciona oportunidades para que las personas se puedan desenvolver en muchos ámbitos. En el debate de hoy revisaremos datos y conoceremos historias para dar respuesta a la pregunta: ¿cómo el bilingüismo puede fortalecer el crecimiento económico en Colombia? El debate de hoy será en inglés.
El debate.
Before I begin this debate, I would like to introduce my guests. María Gabriela Ángel is a bilingual political scientist and internationalist with expertise in program management strategies, international cooperation, strategic communication, and government affairs. She also has experience analyzing and executing international plans between international organizations and government entities. Welcome, María Gabriela.
Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure.
And my second guest is Patrick Brandabor. He's from Cincinnati, Ohio. He is currently completing his master's degree in management and leadership, focusing on Spanish, English bilingual language learning, and how it can impact individuals, business, and societies for better. His past experience in fintech world includes managing the day-to-day operations of a bilingual call center in Bogotá, beginning in early 2019 and continued from nearly 4 years. The business relationship in Colombia, combined with personal visits to Bogotá, led to enduring friendships and love for the beautiful city of Bogotá, the country of Colombia, and the wonderful people who live there. The combination of his educational pursuits, work experience, and friendships led to following and connecting many people throughout Colombia, and also inspired an idea, a concept called bilingual fluidity, fluidez bilingüe, with the conviction that national bilingual learning initiative in Colombia, consisting of an ecosystem of public-private partnership leading to economic growth, prosperity, and social improvements, helping make lives better for Colombian friends. Welcome, Patrick. Happy to have you here.
Thank you, Martin. Good to be here. I appreciate you asking me to join you.
Thank you very much, both of you. You can find them in LinkedIn, and in the description of this episode, you will find the link to their profiles. So, to begin this debate, I would like to start with this question. It's: how can bilingualism improve Colombia's economic growth? I would like to take into account that last week, a very exciting recent news for Colombia and Barranquilla, that in Barranquilla is aiming to become a 100% bilingual city, and the British Embassy, along with the British Council and the Barranquilla's educational institutions, are beginning to implement a project which will increase the teaching of English, of the English language. So, Patrick, what do you think of this?
Actually, I think it's fantastic news. not only from the standpoint of what it does for the city of Barranquilla, but also that, it looks like Barranquilla has created what could really be seen as an evolving model for what could happen throughout the rest of the country of Colombia. One thing that I've noticed is, Barranquilla is way ahead of the curve as far as this whole movement towards bilingualism. And that's something that's happening, as I said, all across the country, whether it's in Bogota or Barranquilla or Santander or, Cartagena, all the way into, as far into the rainforest in Colombia. We have people who are expressing a desire to become bilingual. And I think it's fantastic. And the possibilities that could come of it in the very near future are amazing for Colombia.
Thank you, Patrick. Maria Gabriela.
Yeah, for me, I think that the main part or the most interesting fact about this news is the willing and also the improvement around the idea of the economy in the country. It's not just the idea of bringing foreign visitors or increasing our tourism around these magical places around the world. I think that we can also see the intention behind an initiative like the one that you just brought to the debate, Martin, since it's all connected. It's not just having the visitors, it's also having the possibility to making them feel a little bit more connected to the culture, even though that doesn't change what we do, what we eat here in Colombia, but it does change the fact that we can include them and make them feel a little bit more connected, with our local people. Just in few scenarios, like a restaurant, like a hotel reception, and also all the touristic places that our coast offers. So I think that it's all part of that huge effort that Colombia is doing around the tourism, but again, not just allowing people and inviting them to come, but also having other tools and other aspects around that tourism in the country.
Thank you, Maria Gabriela. Patrick, you were telling us off mic that you have some interesting stories to share from people in Colombia related to bilingualism. Would you like to share one of them?
One of most of the stories that I write about are reflections of what's taking place in the country. And it amazes me. The first one that I saw was actually a post from, I believe it was the CEO of Taxis Libres. And she posted a picture of a taxi driver who obviously he wasn't driving. He was at an intersection, completely stopped, and he was studying English for a certification test. And I thought, if there was one thing that seems to be a common thread that I see more and more frequently, is that regardless of your economic or social status currently, it appears that everyone has this desire to become bilingual. And one thing I want to emphasize really quickly is that even though, the emphasis or a lot of the conversation is about learning English, the reason it is because English is at a deficit, not because it's more important. And what I like most about, one of the things I like about what's going on in Barranquilla is that they have adopted the concept of bilingualism. And that is having, an understanding and respect for both languages, that the Spanish language is of equal importance to English as is English to Spanish, along with, of course, the other number of languages that are spoken in Colombia to a lesser degree. So at any rate, what I found was really interesting about that was, taxi drivers wanting to become bilingual because they know that they're serving a public that is growing more and more globally. So from an individual aspect, you have this taxi driver who knows potentially his income is going to increase if, when he's picking people up at the airport and they happen to be from Europe or possibly China or the Middle East, that if he is able to say, where would you like to go? And given that English is the lingua franca, the global language, that customer is able to easily communicate with them in that language, that not only is he quite frankly possibly going to get a better tip, but the amount of business that he's going to get is going to increase. And that kind of plays into the whole bilingual ecosystem, the ability of moving back and forth between these two languages in order to not only attract more of a global market for Colombia, but also be able to go out into the global market as well. So I see it with taxi drivers, and the other one that I'd like to mention really quickly was I believe it's the executive director of Escuela El Bosque, which their main focus is with maintaining and reforestation and global sustainability. And what I found interesting was that she has villagers that are walking to her to learn English now. And she was relating the story that at first, when she'd offered these classes, they had said that they didn't have time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At a later date, they came back and said, this is really important. And what struck me was the point of view that she brought up is that, someday down the road, these people may be negotiating leases for carbon credits with someone, and that someone may be speaking in a foreign language, and English is going to be the common language that helps them to better understand and protect themselves in these negotiations. And I thought that was a very interesting kind of perspective as to how pervasive the need and the benefits are for being bilingual. So those are a couple of the stories. Gosh, I could go on ad infinitum with other success stories of seeing people that have learned and gotten new and better jobs. And really, what's equally exciting is you get this sense of excitement from people who are starting to undertake this bilingual journey, and how often they say that, wow, now I realize that doors are opening where I never thought they would open before. And I think that's true not only individually, but I think it's as a community and a country, that bilingualism is going to blow open some doors that haven't been open or haven't been available, and will be in the future for Colombia. I definitely think it's a game changer.
Thank you, Patrick. Maria Gabriela, what do you have to say of what Patrick just commented us?
I think that again, when we conceive this subject as a general in the country, as a common project that the administration, the local entities, the government, etc., are trying to improve or to actually execute, I think that again, and as Patrick mentioned, it's something that has a lot of potential, and also we can dig deeper in the subject and find a lot of maybe milestones for a huge change in the Colombian economy and also in the Colombian tourism, which I think that both of those areas are very connected in terms of this subject. But I would also like to bring to the debate the perspective from the individual side. For example, nowadays in Colombia, it's yeah, even though most of the schools and colleges demand each of the students to know some basis of English, for example, which remains as one of the main languages in the country to learn. Even though there are also schools that have a huge influence from Germany or France, etc. English is the main language, language beside Spanish. So even though we have that in our elementary school and in our undergraduate schools, I mean colleges, I also think and I also consider important to discuss this part a little bit, and it's the fact that even though most of us when we are in college we have basis, or some of us know English because we've learned it before, or we've been studying or on our own, or we've been traveling, etc. When we actually graduate from college and we start to get ourselves involved in the job search and in the actual market, story, it's also very easy to identify the fact that this isn't something that highlights the profile of anybody nowadays. It isn't something that makes you, a more interesting candidate. It's just something that most of the companies and most of the entities or places that you want to work, I mean, it doesn't relies on one specific area. It's just a general thing. In any scenario that a company is looking for employee, they won't take, or they won't add more points to your profile just because you know English. They expect you to know it. In the job market, it's something that is practically a must-have in your resume. So I believe that even though for our parents, for example, for the Colombian parents of the generation, I don't know, the parents that nowadays have around 50 or 55 years old, for that generation, English was actually something that opened doors regarding your resume, that make you a different candidate besides the other people that are competing for the same job offer. But nowadays, for our generation, for the people that are, for example, my age, I'm 25, well, almost 25, and probably the generation that is following me, nowadays is just something that you have to actually possess in your resume, something that you actually need to prove that you know it and that you can talk about it, etc. And probably the fact that you know maybe 3 languages can open another door for you, but just knowing one nowadays in the job search and when you are trying to actually improve your resume, I believe that it's not enough, just one language, sorry.
Thank you, Maria Gabriela. Yes, I found the stories of Patrick very fascinating, and it's true. Knowing English or another language, for that matter, can be a game changer to the table. It can change, or it can help you in your daily life, or more precisely in a business, in a company, for your work. It is easier nowadays with this globalized world to communicate in English, which is the most global language of them all. And what Maria Gabriela said it is true. Many universities ask it's mandatory to have a second language. Most of the time is English, but it can be others. And if you don't show the certificate of I don't know, A2 or B1, you can't continue with your studies. I found that this is very good for the universities because they are asking for the people to improve or to start learning English. And for instance, at least in international relations, most of the authors that you read are from the United States or from the United Kingdom. And there are no translations for these academic papers that they make. And you have to read them in English. And the concepts, for example, are easier to understand in English than in Spanish. And that is how it is. This will not change. And this demands that people need to know another language, English for this matter. And finally, I agree also with Maria Gabriela that before, with our parents, 50 years ago, or even less, that English was actually a game changer for an interview when you were going to get a work. But nowadays, it is almost obvious for anyone that you know English if you apply for a job, no matter which one is it. And it's also better to be trilingual instead of bilingual. Patrick, what do you think of what we've been talking about? You're muted. Okay, so while Patrick is...
Oh, sorry about that. I muted myself accidentally. Actually, you know what? I agree completely. You know, I think what that shows evidence of is that bilingualism at a minimum and polylingualism, which is a whole nother subject that we could get involved in, is a trend that's happening in Colombia and is actually a fantastic thing to hear. For there to be a base level of expectation for knowledge of the English language, as you guys had said, you know, it's universally accepted, you know, not only with international publications, but internet content, or if you get into the IT field with programming and languages and things of that sort, the necessity to have a base knowledge of English is beyond an option or an extra bullet point. It's considered an essential skill to have. And I think that further reinforces the need for there to be some type of, you know, national recognition. And if I recall correctly, even the new Minister of Education, after she had some high-level meetings with the head of our education department in the United States, had brought up bilingualism and the importance of it. So I think that segues into a nice topic of creating the bilingual ecosystem, right? So that's where, you know, when you're talking about at the college level, postgraduate level, when you're talking about businesses, of that level of expectation of having a good base knowledge of English, what about the ones that are not in the college postgraduate level or in the, say, executive portion of the business world? It's becoming as equally important for them to have a knowledge of English, whether it is, you know, a CEO of one of the major Colombian corporations, or whether it's one of the street vendors that I'm buying jewelry from in Bogota. That knowledge of English is going to benefit everybody. So my point of it being is not only does it bring up, it is an expectation at the college level, but providing a more of a national initiative where the ability to learn the language, regardless of whether or not you're pursuing college, post-secondary education in the business world, or whether you're in the merchant world, or whether you're a farmer even, that having that knowledge of English is beneficial not only individually, but that grows exponentially as a community. And I think that's one of the main drivers behind why Barranquilla has taken on the task of becoming the first bilingual city in all of Latin America, that they understand that it's pervasive. I like to say that, you know, the English language is, or let me emphasize, bilingualism is like the thread that weaves the fabric of economic growth and prosperity. The knowledge of it benefits everybody within that ecosystem because it attracts so much more possible business, not only to that community, but then gives that community the ability to present itself to the global market. So no longer is a street vendor, let's say they become part of an incubator and end up getting on Amazon as a reseller, that they have an extensive or a good enough knowledge of the English language to where they can start selling their product not only on the streets of Bogota, but now they're selling them to the entire world. So the possibilities or the doors that open as a result of this, I think are simply amazing. And I believe that it's not so much me thinking it's a great idea as much as what I see occurring in Colombia is that growing desire for a more pervasive bilingual community and having bilingualism become a norm in areas where you don't expect it. You know, outside of the universities and the businesses, wherever you go in the country of Colombia, that people have a working based knowledge of the English language, and the possibilities that can arise from that are just exponentially great.
Thank you, Patrick. Before I give you the word, Maria Gabriela, I would like to put on the table some data that I found. It comes from the report of 2022 from Education First, which says in a general view that Quindío, Atlántico, and Bogota are the departments with a better English level in the country, but it is a moderate level, which is good in general matters. And in the other side, on the other hand, there's the red part, which is Putumayo, followed by Norte de Santander, Córdoba, and Tolima, which are the lowest in the English learning language. So, but taking into consideration the proposals of President Petro with the National Development Plan, it includes to close the gap of education as much as he possibly can. This includes, of course, the English level, which I really hope that the other cities can follow the example of Barranquilla and start working towards a bilingual city. Maria Gabriela, what do you have to say?
Well, I think that the data is very interesting, especially the fact that Quindío is in it, and I think I may have an idea or a notion why why Quindío has that that level, and I believe, or I can assume that is a result from the huge amount of foreign visitors again that really enjoy being around the Cocora Valley. I think that that impacts a lot in a department that isn't that big actually, but a department that welcomes and also provides a really eco-touristical, even though it isn't that far from the city. I mean, yeah, for foreign visitors. So I believe that Quindío may be a little bit what's the word for that? I think that influence can be part of the result in that data. But I also believe that regarding the President Petro's idea or development plan, I believe that this problem regarding education in general around our territory is something that has to do more with the institutional in insufficiency than the lack of interested in knowing English, or the lack of willing in the youth to learn it. I believe that it's more regarding the fact that in places like Putumayo, there are a lot of climate conditions that have been helping the department to be every time more and more affected and not being able to progress. And also the fact that in terms of institutional development and institutional willing and institutional interested again, I believe that there's a huge hole in that part, and we can see the results in data like the one that you just brought to the table, Martin. So I also, as you wish, that the idea of Petro can be materialized, but I also believe that it's a challenge regarding the political willing and the political distribution of resources and power and everything that can really improve education in general. And after that, we can start talking about the specific points in that education, because we have plenty of places in the territory that are really, really marginalized, and they don't even have access to basic education. So if there isn't a basic one, starting to think about other things like bilingualism, I think that it's something a really huge challenge, for those cities, that it isn't compared to all the economical and political power that a department in a city as Barranquilla can do. So I think that it's a huge process for places that are marginalized.
I totally agree with you. So we are running out of time and we need to make our conclusions. So Patrick, what do you, after this conversation, what are your conclusions of this topic?
Well, first and foremost, to address, the topic that you guys were just discussing, I read frequently a lot about what the Ministry of Education is doing, the development plan that Petro rolled out, and the huge disparity in the education system within the country of Colombia. What happens in the rural communities is completely different than what happens in the major cities. And the big hurdle, not only with education, but with something as simple as Wi-Fi access, that you have that whole challenge ahead of you as well. And that's why when I talk about things about like a national language learning initiative, that it's a public-private partnership, right? So how do you overcome the challenges of, say, the fact that in rural communities, less than 3 of 10 people have access to a laptop, or how many people have either no Wi-Fi access or very little or intermittent, or they have to find a hotspot. So all of those things present challenges, and where the public-private partnership entity of it comes in, and I'm specific to bilingualism, of course, is that language can be presented in a number of different ways, right? So if it's something as simple as providing bilingual language on packaging of consumer goods, if the Juan Valdez coffee cup had Spanish on one side and English on the other, it introduces the informal and casual opportunities for people to learn the language. Language learning doesn't have to be structured in a classroom environment all the time. In fact, what neuroscience supports is that teaching happens in the classroom, and the learning of the language actually happens outside of it with our day-to-day interactions. And I'm saying that to the point of what I keep going back to is not necessarily what I believe, but what I observe, right? And what I observe is taxi drivers and farmers and students and street vendors all have this same thing in common in Colombia, that they know, understand, and have the desire to learn English and to achieve a level of bilingualism, because they know deep down that that's going to benefit them, their communities, and the country. And I absolutely agree. There are a lot of hurdles. Quite frankly, I have to give some kudos to the Ministry of Education, because they're already coming up with ideas to overcome it. One of them that I read recently was about having college students do internships in some of these rural schools as paid interns in order to teach, because there's obviously going to be a lack of qualified instructors. So, for all of the challenges, of course, that we have, there's also opportunities for us to think creatively, do creatively, and work for that common good with the understanding. I mean, one thing that I really haven't gotten resistance about when I bring up this conversation is, no, that's really a bad idea. Bilingualism is not going to work for the tourist business or business in general. Everyone thinks it's a great idea. It's just a matter of my main thrust is, of all of these parts that are already working, that you have the government entities, you have businesses who are teaching their own employees English and bilingualism, that you have the non-government organizations like the British Council or USAID or some of the other well over 200 organizations, United Way of Colombia, for example, are all on the same page, but they're all working separately. So my main point is, from a national learning initiative, is bringing all of that together and then creating synergies as a result and accelerating that ability to get out to the places that are sorely lacking now and making a big difference.
Thank you, Patrick. Maria Gabriela, what are your conclusions for today's conversation?
Well, I think that the perspectives that we brought to the table are all very interesting, and I think that they all have plenty to keep discussing about. But I think that mostly I would like to highlight the fact that I completely agree with the fact that it's a very ambitious initiative for the Colombian government, even though or regardless is at a local motivation or a governmental one. but I do believe that it's a very ambitious initiative and a very ambitious project to begin with, to keep investing on it and to keep adding more partners to the table. Because as Patrick mentioned it, yes, of course, all the development and all the efforts that the country needs to do regarding education at the first level in all the territory corners, all those efforts have to be done with help from international partners and also other kinds of partnership and cooperation mechanisms, because the institutional effort isn't enough. I mean, even if the president keeps making emphasis in the fact that his policy, his educational policy, sorry, and his national development plan aims to close the gap in the rural areas regarding the educational advance or development. Even though he claims that there will always be that little task that in terms of money and in terms of actually a huge deployment, it isn't that little, and the government and then the state itself cannot take charge into all of that.
Go on. I don't know what happened.
Okay, sorry. With the help of international partners and other mechanisms of international cooperation. So I think that that's the main highlight for me, recognizing the fact that it's a very ambitious initiative, a very ambitious project, and I completely agree, and I completely back this goal that Barranquilla has started. But I also believe that it's the beginning of a huge project for Colombia. It's a milestone, and I would like to see also the tourism being very what's the word for that? Being very influenced, and also show a huge amount of results after the idea of providing all Colombians the possibility to speak another language and to include it in whatever activity they do on a daily basis, not just in terms of professional skills, which we all agree that they are part of another perspective. But if we take this debate to the daily basis of a regular Colombian anywhere in the country, as Patrick also mentioned it, I believe that it's very important to keep contributing to the fact that the possibility of them speaking another language can be introduced and can be also combined with whatever activity they do, regardless a professional skill or not.
Thank you, Maria Gabriela. And with this, we end this debate and move on to the recommendations of the week.
Recomendaciones de la semana.
So, for the recommendations of the week, taking into account that while this podcast is being recorded here in Bogota, we are in the International Book Fair. I would like to recommend a book, one of my favorite ones, which is by the author Joel Dicker, and it's called The Truth About the Case of Harry Kerber, La Verdad sobre el caso de Harry Kerber. And this book is a mystery novel which involves the murder of a person, and the mentor of the protagonist, his professor, is being accused of this murder. One of the things that I enjoy most of this book is that the book is being written at the same time that we are reading it, which means that the book is all the product of the case. While the author is trying to solve this case, he's actually writing this book. And I found that this really, really awesome. It's a very recommended book if you like this type of novels. Maria Gabriela, what do you have for us?
Well, I consider myself as a cinephile, and I really enjoy movies, series, and everything around making of them. So there's well, my first recommendation, I think it's a little bit cliche by now, but this season has been just overwhelming, is Succession. I believe that from the third episode of this season, the series has just reached its climate, and I believe that just with that episode, all of them deserve an Emmy nomination again. So that's
Yes.
the first one. I think it's cliche, but this season is just overwhelming. And the second one is something a little bit more emotional, I believe, at some point, and it's a series on Disney Plus. It's called Renovations. Um, uh, the title is very interesting because the main actor, which isn't actually doing a character, sorry, it's himself playing as the main actor. It's his name is Jeremy Renner. He's known as Hawkeye from from the whole Marvel series, and he recently made this project with Disney Plus, where he decided to bought some of the buses that from some cities in the US were like the result. I mean, those buses weren't at use anymore. I don't know how to call that, but basically, yeah, a huge amount of buses weren't going to be used anymore. So he decided to ask for them to the government. I believe he bought them, and he decided to gave them purpose, but those purposes were aimed for a specific target from each community that he visited. So the season is it's just one season, and I believe that there are 12 episodes. And in each episode, he goes to a community in any place in the world, and he brings those bosses, and that's why the name is called Renovations, because he provides the space, the material part as the boss, but they change it in order to provide that community with whatever need they claim to have. So, for example, there's a community that wanted to have something to do with music, so he built up alongside all the crew like a music center from that boss. So for me, it was very special to see just a regular Hollywood actor being surrounded by community, by little kids, by people who actually belong to a specific territory, and just hang with them and help them with this initiative. So for me, those are my two recommendations.
Thank you, Maria Gabriela. Patrick, what do you have for us?
Well, first I have to acknowledge that I need to binge watch Succession, obviously, because you guys both love it. For me, anything on Disney Plus is a must. I'm about to start on Renovations. Maria, so thank you for bringing that one up. Mine would be a book that just came out called The Power of Language by Viorica Marion. And it's an in-depth study of not only how language learning benefits from knowing the language, but a multitude of benefits that it gives you as well. And the other book, is Hembrujas by Claudia Palacios. I just started reading that, Actually, it's an audio book, and I'm slowly listening and kind of going along with it. That's been I'm on my like second or third person that she's done stories on. Just an amazing book about women in Colombia and their stories. And then lastly, of course, I have to mention Betty LaFea, because that was the first television I saw, the first show I saw when I was in Bogota, Colombia. So, and I like the Colombian version better than the American version. So that would be my recommendations.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you so much, María Gabriela. And returning to Spanish, a ustedes, estimados oyentes, muchas gracias por escuchar este episodio. Si les gustó, por favor, compártanlo con sus conocidos y recuerden que si quieren hacer parte de estos debates, ya sea sugiriendo un tema o siendo invitado, por favor, contáctenme por LinkedIn. Nos escuchamos en un siguiente debate.
Esto fue Voces Globales, disponible en Spotify y Apple Podcast y Google Podcast.